Hello, konnichiwa, and welcome, Radio Magic, here with some magic, making sure you get your magic fix. If you'd like to show your support or enjoy the video, remember you can do that simply by leaving a like down below, maybe a comment of what you liked or some ideas you've got in the future. Today we are playing Jeskai Control with 9 Teferis and 2 Inspired Ultimatums. Something that I've been having a lot of fun with and using to climb the ladder to Mythic at the moment. I'm currently in Diamond, so I know this list works to some extent. And we're going to run it for a league today to see how it goes. But I'm going to waste no more time. Let's get into the list and I'll give you a quick rundown. On the 2-drop slot, we have 2 Search Raz Canters. I'm sure you all know what this does by now. It's a legendary enchantment that at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to look at the top card of your library. You can then surveil that. And if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can transform Search Raz Canter. And it transforms into Azcanta the Sunken Ruin, and then essentially you pay 3 and tap it, and you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You can reveal a non-creature card, non-land card from among them, and put that into your hand. A really good late game card advantage engine, but even if it doesn't flip, it's really good just getting the surveil each turn, sort of sorting out your draws, making sure you hit your land drops. We also have free Dovins Veto, an Azorius instant, and this spell cannot be countered. Counter target non-creature spell. I'm essentially running this instead of any other counter spells because I think it's really good at the late game stopping them Ugins. We're not ideally holding this up on turn 2 unless we're against the mirror match, but most of the time this is going to catch out Nissas and Ugins and all that Bant Ramp happening at the moment because we don't essentially have any other ways to stop that. We also have free Justice Strikes, a Boros instant that target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. This essentially lets us answer things much higher up on the curve, sometimes at 4, 5, even 6 mana. We can kill them really high-powered creatures for simply 2 mana at instant speed. A lot of the time, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria can come down on turn 5. We can tick up, untap our 2 lands, and then Justice Strike something that tries to hit Teferi down and answer that off the board. A really powerful answer to quite a few creatures in the format. I've been really impressed with Justice Strike. We also have 4 Bone Crusher Giants, and oh my god, has this card been phenomenal. I normally run 2 of these, or sometimes none at all in these control lists, because the 2 damage isn't always relevant, but the fact it can go at Planeswalkers, finishing off Narsets and Teferis that are just trying to get some card advantage is really, really good. It can also answer creatures. In the mono red matchup, this is fantastic. You can cast it on turn 2 and then play it just as its body on turn 3. It's a phenomenal blocker and it can trade normally up with a lot of creatures. This is really unique because it allows you to curve out really effectively. You can cast it on turn 2 and then cast it on turn 3 and then maybe into your board wipe turn 4, but this will obviously cycle. So we won't 2-for-1 ourselves, or we will make sure we draw a card. So we get that value off of it. So Bone Crusher Giant has been an all-star in the deck I have found. We also have 2 timely reinforcements. So originally when I was playing this list on stream, you can find that on the channel, this was 2 Sinister Sabotages. But I found we were playing against a lot of aggro, and even when we're not playing against aggro, timely reinforcements can come down when your opponent just has 1 creature to create 3 1/1s to help block your Planeswalkers and keep them alive for extra turns. So I found timely reinforcements to be an absolute all-star, and while there's 2 in the main, we also have more in the board to really secure their mono red and Gruel matchups. They just buy us so much time. Of course, we have the namesake part of the deck, Teferi Time Raveler. It would not be a control list without this card, a 3-mana Azorius Planeswalker. I'm sure you all know what this card does by now. No need to really go through it. But essentially, it comes down, replaces itself. Our opponent has to attack it down, gains us a little bit of life in that sort of sense. Just sort of an all-star, shuts down our opponent's counter spells and sort of just tempos them back quite a bit. We also have 4 Shatter the Skies, really good board wipe. Yes, our opponent will often draw a card off of this because they'll control either a questing beast or something with 4 power or greater, but hopefully we're going to outvalue that and we'll be able to stop the extra card draw and hopefully get our 2 or 3-for-1, which is really what we're looking for. Shatter the Sky just mops up. As long as we're killing 2 or 3 creatures with this, we're always going to be happy. Then we have free Teferi Master of Time, a really, really good Planeswalker in M21 that I've been really impressed with, but hasn't been too OP. I've actually really enjoyed this Teferi. It hasn't been too oppressive, like 3 mana or 5 mana Teferi in their time in Standard. But essentially, you may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi Master of Time on any player's turn at any time you could cast an instant. This is really, really relevant in the Nexus matchup, for if they take extra turns, we can activate this +1 on each one of our opponent's turns. So if they fizzle at any time, or if they just keep going but can't kill us, we can then -10, and then maybe we get to take 2 extra turns as well. So really, really good card. The phase out is obviously really good, and the +1 being able to just sort of loot for our deck. If we're in the Gruel Aggro matchup, it allows us to discard them Dovins Vetos. If we're in the Control matchup, it allows us to discard Justice Strikes, sort of all round. Also, we can get rid of them Timely Reinforcements, extra copies of Search Canter. It also fills the graveyard for Search Canter, so Teferi Master of Time does overwork in this deck. On the 5-drop slot, we have 3 Elspeth Conquers Death, just an all-star enchantment. I'm saying all the cards are all-stars, but they really are in this list. You'll see from how the games run. A 5-mana white enchantment. It has 3 loyalty counters, so 3 saga counters, and on the first one we get to exile target permanent an opponent controls if converted mana cost 3 or greater. The second one comes up actually more relevant than you would think. Non-creature spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast until your next turn. And then the third one we get to return a target creature or planeswalker from our graveyard with an additional +1/+1 counter or loyalty counter. Really, really good effect. Most of the time we're getting back our Teferis, normally 3 mana or 5 mana Teferi, sometimes the third one. But obviously we can also get our Bone Crusher Giants back, which is another reason to have Bone Crusher in the deck. Also on the 5-drop slot we have Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This card, just absolutely fantastic. I loved it when it was in Standard. It's just as good now. Normally I'd be running 4 copies of this, but I've just really found it's not necessary. You just need your 1 to close the game, and Elspeth Conquers Death kind of acts like the additional copies to it, as long as you have 1 Teferi out or it's gone to the graveyard. As long as your opponent hasn't exiled this, they've attacked it down, you can keep getting it back with Elspeth Conquers Death and just keep replaying that value. Once you +1 a few times and get that mana advantage, maybe we're playing it on turn 5 and holding up Dovins Veto or Justice Strike or Bone Crusher Giant. Just really, really effective card that does overwork in the deck. On the 6-drop slot, we have 2 Shark Typhoons. So you could play 4 of this because it just cycles early in the game. You're often going to play this on turn 2 or 3, making a 0/0 or 1/1. If we do want to cast it, it can come down as a 6-mana enchantment that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, so essentially our entire deck, you get to create an XX blue shark creature token with flying, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. And then, like I said, we can cycle it for 1 blue and 1 an X, and then we get to make an XX blue shark creature token, whatever X the cycled cost is. So this is going to close the game really, really quickly, or we can do it in our opponent's end step, maybe hit down one of their planeswalkers, often a Teferi, since we can't cast stuff at instant speed, but we still can cycle at instant speed, so really good in their matchups. We also have 2 Inspired Ultimatums, a 7-mana sorcery, so not the most practical card to cast, but still really effective in a lot of matchups, and as you're going to see, this does lock the game away a lot of the time. Target player gains 5 life, us, obviously. Inspired Ultimatum deals 5 damage to any target, so we're often going to kill a planeswalker or a creature our opponent controls, since direct damage isn't going to be that relevant. And then we get to draw 5 cards, and that's the bit we're really looking for. We're just going to propel us into the lead. We're going to draw more removal, more board wipes, more planeswalkers, and just completely take over. So that's the main core of the list. As you can see, I'm sure most of you are aware of what most of these cards do. In terms of the mana basis, we have 4 Jeskai Triomes, 2 Sacred Foundries, 3 Clifftop Retreats, 4 Sulphur Falls, 3 Steam Vents, 3 Hallowed Fountains, 4 Glacial Fortresses, a mountain, an island, and a plains. Essentially, in case our opponent tries to Field of Ruin us, we can get out one of our basics, whichever one is required in the place. In the sideboard, we have 2 Aether Gusts, sort of necessary. There's a lot of green or red decks running around. In mono red this comes in Bant this comes in. Pretty much most decks are running green or red. We also have 2 Timely Reinforcements, making up that playset with the other 2 in the main. In the aggro matchups, like I said, this is an absolute all-star. Even if your opponent has a Chain Whirler, which is worst case scenario, 3 mana to gain 6 life, you're more than happy to pay that when your opponent has a Chain Whirler, but most of the time they're not. And against Gruel, when your opponent doesn't have trample threats or questing beasts that these can't block, you throw these in the way and it forces your opponent to overextend because they need to kill you quicker, because the control list gets more powerful as time goes on, in which you can get more value from your Shatter the Sky, which is also on curve, so it's a win-win situation. Then we have 3 Mystical Disputes, absolutely essential in the mirror matchup, also in the Bant matchup. When your opponent's trying to play their Teferi or Nasa on turn 3, you must have a Mystical Dispute or some form of counterspell available, so we are running 3 of these to make sure we can definitely get these in our opening hand or reliably earlier on in the game. We're also playing 3 Narset Parter Avails. I really wanted these in the main, but I felt there was enough card advantage in the main with our Ultimatums, Teferi, Hero of Dominarias, and Search Razcanters. So we're running these in the board. These are essentially for the Bant matchups or decks where your opponent's trying to just draw a load of extra cards, maybe the cycling matchup, although we haven't seen too much of that. But also really good against Bant. It comes down, replaces itself, and hopefully the static abilities can stop them growth spirals and Uros from spiraling and just sort of taking over the game. We also have 2 Sinister Sabotages. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't sure which counterspell to run here. We could have run an extra Dovins Veto and an extra Mystical Dispute. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe Absorb is the right answer. But essentially, these are in the board for more of a control-y matchup. That's why I lent Sinister Sabotage above Absorb. We could also run the Cycling counterspell as well, which could be effective since if our opponent has resolved a Teferi Time Raveler. We just want to cycle this away. But I found the Surveil was really relevant. It fills the graveyard for Search Razcanter while also setting up our next draw, which when it's in a mirror match and you've both got one card in hand and Sinister Sabotage is our last card, making sure our next draw is a live draw is really, really important. We also have 3 Deafening Clarions. This gives us a total of 7 board wipes after sideboarding against them pesky aggro matchups, along with Timely Reinforcements and Bone Crusher Giants. This sort of just locks it away. We can also choose the second mode on this in this deck by, if we don't want a board wipe, but we can give our Bone Crusher Giant lifelink or our 1/1 Timely Reinforcements tokens lifelink to gain some extra life, just hold out for as long as we can until we can get to that inspired ultimatum mana. But yeah, that's the list. Sorry it took so long to go through that. It's sort of a lot to explain in the control matchup. A lot's happening and a lot to take in. But remember, if you want to have your deck idea, combo, or sort of card build around that you'd like to see me play either on stream or just in a YouTube deck tech, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below. Just really showing support for a growing channel, and we're going to show as much content as we can and make sure that everyone's sort of ideas are heard and deck ideas are shown. But that's the list. Remember, if you guys liked, drop a thumbs up. We're going to run this through a league on Arena and see how it goes. So we're either going to get 5, we need to get 5 wins before we get 2 losses. So this could be a rather long video today, but make sure you stick around for as long as you can and leave your comments on any misplays or punts you think I made, and I will catch you again in the wrap-up. Okay, let's jump into game 1. I think we're going to choose the on the play. Really good opening hand. I think we're going to snap keep this. Search Razcanter is always good on 2, especially when you're on the play. I'm going to start with our Triome. So, Rootbound Crag for our opponent. Probably Gruel without a Shockland. I think we'd rather play the Search Razcanter to start getting value off of it now, rather than holding up Justice Strike. We're going to want double blue for Teferi. Okay, so probably not Gruel aggro when our opponents cast a Stonecoil Serpent. So Dovins Veto, do we want to keep this? I think we just want to graveyard this. Search for extra lands, find some more removal spells since this has immunity to Justice Strike. A Bone Crusher Giant would be really good here. I think we just want to play this tapped. I don't think making a 1/1 Shark is going to be useful here. We might want to make a 2/2 Shark next turn. Fortunately, that wasn't a Gruel Spellbreaker. We could still see one here. Just a Domri. Just gonna tick up here, maybe cast a Pelt Collector. No. I guess if that's all they had, it would have made more sense to cast the Pelt Collector before the Burning Tree Emissary. We're just gonna try and reduce damage here. Shatter's really good at answering this. I think we're going to keep this. So I think the best course of action now is just to play Teferi. And we can phase out the Stonecoil Serpent. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have a hasty threat. So we want to keep that. We'll discard Shark Typhoon. Though Shark Typhoon is a way to close the game, I think we just want Teferi to generate some card advantage. Master of Time's also going to ramp us by flipping the Search Razcanter sooner. So opponent has a Castle Breath. We need to be careful of that when going to combat. And letting our opponent attack. So attacking for free here. I think we're happy to let this free. So now that our opponent's activating this, it's going to deal 4. So I think we just want to tick up. Elspeth Conquers Death. That might actually be quite good. I think we discard Teferi now since we can get it back and we can Elspeth the Domri. I think that's right. I don't see our opponent game 1 having a way to answer Elspeth Conquers Death.
Have at it, boys.
There's the Llanowar Elves. I think we're going to keep this. Keep it for now, see what we draw off Teferi. Another Teferi. I think I like just discarding the Justice Strike now. We'll just keep our Teferi at a high enough loyalty. Sort of all the time he's on the field, he's gaining 6 extra life, because our opponent has to try and attack him down. Could see a hasty questing beast here. No, hasty Gruel Spellbreaker. This is going to finish off our Teferi. We might just cast this Elspeth Conquers Death on the Gruel Spellbreaker. Discard that land.
I was out of sync.
So things on the board to bring in, probably Deafening Clarion's an idea. Opponent's just going to cast a Bone Crusher Giant. We want to graveyard this Teferi at the moment. Yep. Another Teferi. I think I prefer just Elspeth Conquers Death now. Rather just take out that Bone Crusher Giant. Or maybe I want to take out the Gruel Spellbreaker instead, since Teferi can phase out the Bone Crusher Giant. We take an additional damage now. It's also important to note that the Gruel Spellbreaker was a 4-turn clock. This is a 3-turn clock. Doesn't matter with the Zertar Goblin though. So taking 10 here. Probably made a mistake discarding the Justice Strike. I feel like going back to that decision, we should have played Teferi, ticked up. Maybe discard the Elspeth Conquers Death instead. So we need to find a removal spell here.
It takes impressive knowledge to be a temporal archmage.
Okay, we'll concede that. I feel like we made a mistake with the Justice Strike. It's difficult to make up your mind as to what you want to do when Teferi is providing so much card filtering. I don't think on the sabotages. Let's bring in the Clarions as well. We can cut Teferi, but these are good. Dovins Vetos can go. Elspeth Conquers Death's okay. I think we can cut the Search for Canters. Our opponent saw them game 1. It's likely that they bring in the 2-mana enchantment, that whenever you cast a non-creature spell you take a damage, and then they can sack it to destroy target enchantment. I think I like this configuration. Maybe there's an argument to keep in Teferi above a Shark Typhoon, but I like the way of just closing the game really quickly. This hand has a 6, well, it has all of our high curve stuff. I think we're going to mulligan that. Need some earlier interaction. Can't really argue with a double board wipe. I think we put the basic mountain on the bottom. Timely reinforcements will hopefully buy us a lot of time, and then buy double board wipe. Maybe it's too greedy. Maybe we should be bottoming a board wipe now that we've put Clarions in. We shall find out. We're just going to let it tap land. Looks like our opponent is off to a super fast start. Hopefully this timely reinforcements is going to buy us enough time. Maybe it will push our opponent to overextend a little bit more. I think what we want to do is just trade with one here. Otherwise our opponent will sense a board wipe is incoming. We want to keep one back. Just take 4. So our opponent's choosing to not overextend anymore. I think we're just going to make a 2/2 shark and cycle. Really want to get some more value out of these shatters before we cast them. We could just see a questing beast here as well. So that's our goblin. I think we're just going to make a 2/2. Third shatter. So we're definitely going to cast one of these now. I don't want to get too greedy. I think we're just going to play this out. Could potentially hold this in hand and cycle it. So opponent's going to scoop it up there. They must have had a rather slow start, or they had the early aggression but nothing to follow it up with. Okay, here we go. Single Aethergust, 6 lands. I think this has to be a mulligan. Our opponents kept their hand. This looks better. I'm going to keep this. Going to put one of these triomes on the bottom. I was potentially thinking to keep it in hand so we could cycle it. But I think we're just going to play them out. The risk is flooding out here. So we could see a really early questing beast here. Burning Tree. Oh, opponent's going to put us back on lands. Really effective here. Luckily we have the extra land so our lands won't end up tapped. Or shock land, that's just better. So we're really relying on this timely reinforcements. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have another Goblin Ruin Blaster. We are potentially taking 6 here. Embercleave. Yeah. So we're taking 10. That's a lot of damage. Hopefully this Embercleave can get us to the shatter. Hopefully this timely reinforcements can get us to the Shatter of the Sky. I feel like if we cast this Shatter, we're going to be in a good position. So our opponent does have the Questing Beast as the last card in hand. So this has Double Strike and Trample. So we could take 6 and then 4 the 10 and block these 3. Since blocking here is not going to matter too much. So to soak up the most amount of damage. Obviously we can't block this because creatures with power 2 or less can't be blocked. So we take 10 overall. And then we have to hope that the Shatter next turn is good enough. Our opponent gets to draw a card, but hopefully they don't have any haste threats. We're asking a lot here. Shifting Ceratops is going to do it. It's going to be game 1 to our opponent. We got rather unfortunate game 1. Made some mistakes with what we were discarding. Probably could have played it out better. But live and learn. Let's move on to the next game. Okay, we are going to go on the play against a Yorion Sky Nomad deck. I don't think this hand's good enough against the companion we're against. I don't see them having many creatures. Let's mulligan this. This hand isn't necessarily better, but I don't really want to go to 5 on the play. put steam vents on the bottom. Let's put planes on the bottom. I'm going to play the Triumph on 1. Hopefully we don't flood and need to cycle it. We could keep it to cycle on 3. It's going to play out Sulphur Falls, so we have the option of Bone Crusher Giant. I think we just want to stomp and then just play out Bone Crusher Giant so we have something to do each turn. Our opponent's likely on some sort of ramp. Having both of our ultimatums isn't exactly ideal. Hopefully this Bone Crusher can put some pressure on. See a Teferi here. Yep. So opponent might bounce back the Bone Crusher Giant. That's exactly what they're going to do. I think we are just going to replay it. Maybe we'll just shock actually. Try and get some value. Since our opponent can then tick up and they can potentially board wipe. I don't want to allow our opponent to untap with Teferi. Okay, so we missed our land drop. We're just going to cast a Bone Crusher Giant. If our opponent has Casualties of War, it's looking really bad for us. They're just going to Oath. Okay, so land's really good. Just going to go up to Teferi. Hopefully they give us a reason to Elspeth Conquers Death next turn. Just going to keep finding our lands. So I'd imagine our opponent has a way to answer this. They might just try and attack him down. We get an extra untap. So they're going to allow us to tick up again. Maybe a Hydroid Crisis. Oh, okay. So we're going to lose our Teferi here. But we can Elspeth Conquers Death that. First time I've seen this card in action. Let's waste no time. So our opponent is in the colours to answer an enchantment. It's going to take 4 more. Okay, land is really good here. Just going to get back some of this life that we lost. Do have to go to discard. Going to discard one of our Justice Strikes. So we get back to Teferi next turn. So opponent might just blink, get some value here. Yep. This is a really good way to give their Paradise Druid hexproof again. And our opponent top deck land. They can escape the Euro as well. We're going to take 3 more. We do have an answer to the Euro. So we will take this to Teferi. An update is available.
Right on schedule.
We'll add a loyalty counter. So interesting what we want to do here. I think I like Elspeth Conquers Death the Yorion and hold up Justice Strike for when the Paradise Druid attacks or they cast Uro and Dovins Veto. So if we're doing that, we will tick up first.
Keep up the pace.
I don't want to be casualty of war. Always feels so bad. And we do have a Bone Crusher Giant in the graveyard, so if we can't get anything else in there, at the very least we'll have some value. Yeah, I think we'll just pass. I like the Dovins Vetos, just a little bit of insurance here. Looks like our opponent's just some sort of value, Blink, Yuri on deck. I really like the Spark Hunter. Main decked as well. There's quite a lot of Planeswalkers running around. So I don't think we have to Justice Strike this instantly, but we will do it in the end step. Yeah, we're gonna stop that. Think we can let Teferi take 2 here.
Don't make another move.
Maybe we just want to be mana efficient and cycle this instead. I think so. Just draw a card.
Hurry.
So we're just sort of trying to outvalue our opponent here. We'll Justice Strike this now. So we don't actually want to get this back yet. So I think we're going to put this back into our hand.
That's more like it.
And we drew another one. I think we're just going to defend our Teferis as well. Timely reinforcements really come in handy here. Blocking this Paradise Druid. It can, if it needs to, as well block the Euro. Okay. So this is what our opponent's doing. I don't believe we have answers in the sideboard for enchantments. Something that there's a flaw in the deck. We have Elspeth Conquers Death. So our opponent's going to be able to tutor here for a 3-drop creature or a 4-drop creature. We're going for a 3-drop, maybe a Deputy. I can see that. Deputy of Detention. Okay, Deputy's going to take 5 mana to Teferi.
Really should have seen
I would imagine just to stop the immediate value. 4+1.
this. Might be a bad idea.
I think I like just Elspeth Conquers Death here. And I think we're going to hit the Deputy to get back our Teferi. And then we can put this back in.
You need to slow down.
And just cast a Searchlight Canter. We can flip this on our turn. So we could have ticked up with the Teferi and just cast a second Elspeth Conquers Death. But I think I like holding this for another answer. Dream Trawler. So opponent can give this hexproof. We get to flip our Searchlight Canter. Once we start making sharks, this Dream Trawler shouldn't be a problem. I think I like that. That answers the Incognation. So it is going to cost more for them next turn as well. Let's tick up.
No time for a break.
Shatter's really good. So I think we just want to cast Shark Typhoon. How much mana have we got? We have 12 mana, 14 if we do it on our opponent's turn. So we can 6 and then cast this at our instant speed on our opponent's turn and hold up Dovins Veto. I think we're going to do that. And we'll lay our land. So we're 2 mana off activating Searchlight Canter and then untapping as well. So we'll just pass. We will board wipe in response to our opponent going to combat. Maybe there's an argument to board wiping now, actually. Our opponent won't get to draw an extra card, because this will have 4 power. I think I like board wiping now. We will get to draw a card. If we waited for this to go off, then our opponent will get to draw an extra one. Maybe there's a reason to wait there. Yeah, and I don't think we're going to allow our opponent to get that. Yeah, going to concede there. So there's an argument as well as just letting that resolve. How bad could a 4-drop creature be from their deck? Okay, against what our opponent's doing, I think we want Aether Gusts. They seem to be quite heavily green. Clarions seem okay. Maybe Timely Reinforcements, while they were good there, I don't know how good they're going to be overall. I think I just like this. Our opponent has Dream Trawler, so we want to keep in the Shatter the Skies. The arguments I can see are for these 3. Their main sake card, the 4-mana enchantment, can be Mystical Disputed. Maybe the Dovins Vetos are enough. Let's run it like this. Okay, our opponent decided to go first, quite rightly. We are going to mulligan this hand with a 1 land. This hand looks much better. Gonna put land on the bottom. He's greedy putting the lands on the bottom, but hopefully it pays off. Had we have known that, we would have put a Shatter on the bottom. We most certainly would have put a Shatter on the bottom. Hopefully we do draw our 4th land. Hopefully our opponent just draws a card here. Yep. Really want to draw land next turn.
This is hardly my worst defeat.
So our opponent might be missing land drops, which is why they tapped so specifically. Tap land is better than no land. We're going to cast a Bone Crusher Giant. Even if we want to Shatter next turn, I think I still will with the Bone Crusher Giant, since it will cycle. I'm still hesitant of our opponent having Casualties of War. I like Veto. I'm just going to attack here. Opponent's going to take it. Going to leave up Justice Strike and Veto. Teferi. You have to veto that. So our opponent might have a counter spell here, but can't counter the veto. Opponent's just going to attack for 2. Looks like our opponent might be leaving up a counter spell as well. We got really fortunate top decking the land again. Bone Crusher Giant really putting in some leg work here and some pressure on our opponent. Opponent cannot escape Uro just yet. They get to ramp though. So 2 arrows back to back. They are very close to escaping it. Them having 2 as well means the first Elspeth Cock's Death isn't going to be too effective. So opponent's still racing us. Teferi's quite good. Let's attack. Opponent's still going to take it. Let's see if our opponent has the Mystical Dispute. Looks like they do. Note they have veto. I guess we're glad to get that out of their hand now, so the Elspeth Conquers Death is ready. We did see Elspeth Conquers Death from our opponent last game. Presumably a way to tutor up Dream Trawler. They might have another 6-drop. Maybe the 6 mana 8, that when it enters it fights a creature. Name escapes me. So our opponent is going to escape Uro. They managed to leave the other Uro in the graveyard. So I think we're just going to Justice Strike this one. Okay, just get to put Urion in. Maybe we just want a board wipe here, actually. So our opponent has no blink value, as they can blink the guard mage, draw another card. We do get to draw a card, our opponent gets to draw a card as well. I think our opponent's generating more value off of that. I didn't want to attack there first, because our opponent can block, and then we won't get to cycle. Equally, if I was worried about our opponent drawing a card, I could have Justice Striked the Yorion first, and then cast Shatter, but then we're still getting the same amount of value. So opponent's just doing something little here, just blinking the birth, getting extra land. Still pretty solid play. They did not have a land. It's likely that our opponent just has a veto again, so I think we're just going to cast Teferi. Okay. It seems counterintuitive, but I'm thinking of just putting the Yorion back. I want to draw a card to make sure we hit our land drops, and our opponent didn't have anything better to blink with 4 mana available, so I can't imagine what else they'd have. So we'll just put the Yorion back.
No, I am not making this up as I go.
Another Teferi. We've already got a target for Elspeth Conquers Death, so we don't need to play one for that sake. We can just leave up Justice Strike. We might cycle the Shark Typhoon. Hopefully our opponent hasn't found a blink target in their draw step. Nope, they're just going to recast it. Maybe they decide to blink the wall. Nope, clever opponent. Deputy. Okay, I think we might just shatter here. I quite like our opponent doing this since it resets the Teferi. Though our opponent might have a veto. So we can play around Mystical Dispute. Opponent had nothing. I think we'll tick down since our opponent is in the colours to just answer it, as we've seen with the Deputy. We'd rather just get the value. And I know we've missed a few land drops, but I think we might just cycle this Triome. And then next turn we might just make a big shark, depending on what our opponent does. That's going to happen. No reason to cycle in response. I think we're going to try and just Elspeth Conquers Death that. I like holding up Veto here as well. I think we're in a good position. We stumbled a bit on lands, but I think we've managed to recover. So our opponent's in a position where they could just escape Uro. Guard Mage is fine. I think we're going to use his veto on just a pretty big threat. So our opponent's looking at the graveyard, probably going to escape Uro here. I think this is what we're saving this Justice Strike for. It's just going to cycle now. Good way to fill the graveyard for Uro. Opponent's shocking. Okay, now I can see just shattering. They can give that haste, so we could take 5 here. I don't like Justice Striking this just to save 5. I'd rather shatter. Yep. Do we want to instant speed shatter? Maybe. I don't think it's going to matter too much. Stops our opponent from countering, I guess. And we'll play this out now. Since we don't have another land drop. So we're going to do this now before our opponent gets attacked with the Euro. They get to draw an additional card. Opponent's just going to concede there. I think they were still in it. They still had a way to get back the Euro, but our Elspeth Conquers Death went off and got back our 4-mana Teferi. And yeah, just happy with the win. Okay, our opponent is on the play, and I think we have a more than reasonable hand to keep. Hopefully the veto early is good. Hallowed Fountain it might be. We're going to start on Glacial Fortress, since the Clifftop Retreat will enter untapped. It does mean we don't get to hold up veto on 2, but there was no way we could have done that anyway. We show our opponent all of our colours. We can just cycle Shark Typhoon here, and I think we might do, just to make sure we hit lands. Looks like we're against Azorius Control with some opts. Actually, I don't think we want to cycle. I think we want to hold it for one more turn. This way, if our opponent decides to play a Teferi with Mystical Dispute back up, they might have Mystical Disputes in the main, we can pressure the Teferi. Equally, we can make a 1-1 here, just to pressure any Planeswalker they play. Okay, not hitting our land drops here. Rather unfortunate. I'm going to go to combat. Seal away here. Yep. Okay, I think we're just going to go to end step and discard the Shatter. We could play Teferi and cycle, but it was likely our opponent had a counterspell there. I'm going to keep Bone Crusher Giant. Let's enter tapped. So opponent just gets to make 1/1s here, so we do have to do something. We'll take this one. Really want to hit land here off the top. Tap land was not what we wanted to hit. I think we're just going to run out of Teferi and force our opponent to do something. Since we have a backup one, we don't want them just activating Castle each turn. Yep, they had the counterspell. So probably Azorius Control confirmed now. Our opponent wants to put second counterspell in the bin. Probably means they have an abundance of counterspells, but not enough lands since they missed that land drop last turn. Yep, it's time for our opponent to make a play.
Stand by and watch.
Opponent's not going to put it at risk. I think we just cast a Teferi of our own. Our opponent's likely to counterspell it, but not much else we can do. Just got to run our opponent out of counterspells. So in case our opponent plays an Elspeth Conquers Death or a 5-mana Teferi and wants to tuck this, we're just going to get some value now. Our opponent could have a Shark Typhoon, which would be unfortunate. They do not. We have to be careful of flipping a Search Cantor as they have Field of Ruin. I'm just going to play a Narset.
I know 88 ways to defeat. Keep an open mind.
So opponent's just left double white open. And they draw an additional card. It's going to tick up.
Oh, I've done the hero thing before.
So I think we have to let our opponent have the extra Narset card. And maybe just play an Elspeth Conquers Death this turn. Actually, maybe it's correct to deal 2 damage here. And hold up Dovins Veto. It's rather suspicious since we could play this out.
Hone your prowess.
Opponent just went to discard there. So we're just going to play this out. Put some pressure on this Narset. So a Shark here would be unfortunate as well, since we would be forced to Justice Strike that. So I think we are going to... I think our opponent's going to go to combat straight away and force us to answer the shark. I think that'd be the correct sequencing. Yep. And since we'd have the Dovins Veto next turn, I think we are going to answer this now. Since I think having Teferi on the board, we've already seen 2 Sinister Sabotages for our opponent, so we know they have counterspells in the main.
I know my responsibility.
Interesting, they're just going to tuck the Bone Crusher Giant. We'd really like to hit a land here. Timely reinforcements. Not exactly what we wanted to hit. So I think we just cast Master of Time. Got to be careful not to activate it in our turn since Narset's on the board. I want to cast Elspeth Conquers Death, but the problem is our opponent can just play another one and we don't have counterspell backup. Really want to have that counterspell available, so we'll just pass.
Have a plan? I'll just make one up.
And activate and discard a Timely Reinforcements. Or a Shatter. So opponent gets to draw.
Keep up the pace.
So, Teferi Time Raveler. I think we're going to have to counter this, since our Dovins Veto is useless otherwise. And since we picked up the second Dovins Veto, I think that's fine. Hopefully our opponent doesn't have double Teferi. It's only their second one, and I assume they have 4. Bone Crusher Giant can just answer Teferi this turn as well. I think we do just answer this Teferi. It's annoying that we can't draw cards, but we can just tick up the bars at the moment.
I'll have a better plan next time.
And next turn, if we draw land, we can look at Elspeth Conquering Death, the Narset. Since effectively our Teferi Master of Time static ability is useless. Ixalan's Binding. This is interesting. It's going for Teferi Time Raveler, it has to be, but we want to save our counterspell. Let's tick up first. If we draw land here, then I'm incentivized to let this happen. We did not. We keep that for a shark. I think we stop this now. But our opponent can't do anything relevant this turn anyway. They can hold up a counter spell for the Conquer's Death though. I think we just stop this. I think that's our second veto. One more. Okay, so opponent just concedes to the veto, so we definitely know that was the right decision to do then. So in this matchup, it's pretty simple. We have all of our control pieces. The Mystical Disputes stop our early game, their early game Teferis. Narset's just for value and shut down the card draw, and Sinister Sabotage. Sinister Sabotage in Overabsorb for one of these reasons. Cutting, Justice Strike, Timely Reinforcements. I like Bone Crusher Giant. I think we're going to cut the board whites, but keep in one. Mainly since we have nothing else to take out, and also they could have a Dream Trawler. We don't know if our opponent has a Dream Trawler. If we see one next game, then it might be likely that we'll board in a few more and take out maybe a Bone Crusher Giant or something. But I like this configuration at the moment. Inspired Ultimatum might not be at its best in this matchup as well. While it is just going to propel us into the lead, our opponent can easily counter it with a Mystical Dispute. So it does rely on us having a Teferi Time Raveler on board to resolve. I like this hand. We have plenty of lands, so if our opponent doesn't put any pressure on us, we can just hold out for ages. With the Mystical Dispute as well, I'd like a second counter spell, since it's quite often an opponent will go on turn 4 to Teferi or Narset with Mystical Dispute backup, so Dovins Veto would be appreciated. So opponent's shocking. I think they're telling us that they have a Mystical Dispute. I think we're going to do the opposite. If our opponent wants to play a Search Rascanter, I think that's fine. Or they're telling us they have an Opt. So we didn't see Search Rascanter last game, but I can only assume our opponent does have one, since... there you go. It's one of the main reasons for playing Opt in these decks. But we're just going to pass. Hopefully our opponent tries to jam a Teferi or Narset here, and we get to punish him. They will not. Second Mystical Dispute's really good. So fortunately we have enough basics for this not to matter. I think islands are most important land in this deck. So we're going to see later on how much this Searchlight Canter is going to hurt us. The Field of Ruin and the Fable Passage is filling up the graveyard really fast. I think our opponent's putting us under enough pressure that we are going to try and resolve. No, we'll just pass. So I didn't know this enter tapped. Obviously assuming that we had our shock land still. So next turn we'll have to cast a Planeswalker. I think we'll cast Narset. It forces our opponent, so we can double counterspell this in response. If we tap our mana correctly. It forces our opponent, if they play a Teferi next turn, they won't be able to tick down if it's Teferi Time Raveler. And if it's a 5 mana Teferi, they will have to tuck Narset first. So this is going to force us to pay 1. We will pay 1 since it's the same as a Mystical Dispute. Interesting, our opponent let that resolve. Not sure what we want here. If our opponent slams a 3 mana Teferi next turn with Counterspell backup, we won't be able to stop it, so the Dovins Veto will be useless. But the Elspeth's Conquer's Death is a way to answer that. So I think since we have double Mystical Dispute and they're still relevant at this point in the game, we're going to take the Elspeth Conquer's Death. Elspeth is definitely something that I've considered for the list as well. Quite easily put in the board.
Focused and disciplined, with thoughtfulness before action.
Opponent has Dovins Veto. Definitely a pain. Let's tick down. Shark Typhoon. So opponent can stop this and we don't have a follow-up play. I think I like 3 mana Teferi. And then Shark Typhoon for 1 in the end step, finishing off Narset. So our opponent's going to counter this, but we have to get the counter spell out of their hand somehow. They're very likely to use it here. It prevents them from just activating Searchlight Canter as well. So opponent might not tick down the Narset knowing about the Shark Typhoon. They are going to. Probably because they have a Searchlight Canter as well. Sinister Sabotage. So our opponent is holding up 1 blue. I think we're going to attempt to Mystical Dispute this. There was no pause there, so it doesn't look like our opponent does have a Mystical Dispute. Just casting Elspeth Conquer's Death. Start to get back our Teferi. And I think we'll represent Dovins Veto. Don't think the 2 life is going to be that relevant. Teferi. Don't think we need to make our opponent pay for this. While it is a pain.
Here goes nothing.
So opponent can no longer Sinister Sabotage the Shark Typhoon. The problem is they can just bounce it next time with Teferi. If they have a Dovins Veto, it's going to be so painful. I really want to cast Inspired Ultimatum. I think we play around Mystical Dispute. Spells cost 2 more. Next turn, if our opponent doesn't answer the Elspeth Conquer's Death, we can get back Small Teferi and then cast Inspired Ultimatum. But for now, we'll just cast Teferi Master of Time. So there was a pause there. Maybe it's priority for the Searchlight Canter.
Apocalypse is to let another happen.
Land is good. I'm tempted to discard the Mystical Dispute since it hasn't got much value, but I think we can still catch our opponent out. I think gonna discard second Teferi. I think the 2/2 Shark is going to be relevant here, especially if our opponent decides to down tick on the Elspeth Conquers Death here, or just to draw a card. This Azcanta is going to outvalue us as well. That's going to be pretty good. It's going to be able to exile the Teferi and then exile the graveyard if it would like to.
Really should have seen that coming. Oh, I've done.
So we might upkeep, activate Teferi Master of Time. I think we'll do this now. We'll do this before we activate Teferi. Narset I like. Narset could work really well here as well. I think we're going to discard Mystical Dispute since we don't have a solid answer to Teferi at the moment. So let's untap, let the Elspeth Conquers Death trigger. Let's see if our opponent decides to exile our graveyard in response. Put full control on. So opponent's going to exile our graveyard. That prevents us from getting that back.
Past is catching up to me.
But because we can activate this at instant speed, we're going to tick up. See if we draw a better Planeswalker. If not, we'll discard the Narset. We will discard Narset. Is this going to work like the way I want it to work? So rereading this before I make a huge mistake, I think it's already targeted. So it's not going to work. So I'm not gonna risk it. I think I'm just going to discard Mountain. Because I haven't tried it, someone in the comments tell me below whether you think that would have worked or not. That would be interesting to see. So we can turn full control off now. So let's smack our opponent for 2. They can Shark Typhoon for 2 to defend the Teferi if they'd like to.
I'm getting too old.
So still believe our opponent has a Teferi, has a counterspell. So we're going to cast this. Hopefully our opponent counters it. Haven't played land. Think we're keeping land. We can just make a 3/3 Shark next turn and block our opponent's 2/2 that comes in. In which case, since we still have Triomes left, I think I'm just going to play this out. We'll leave Narset for 1 turn. So opponent's going to make a 2/2 here. We're going to block it with our 3/3. Shark Typhoon, just really powerful, diverse card. I like Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, so opponent's going to scoop it up there. Obviously, we had a lot of pressure on their Teferi. They might not have had any answers in hand. The Jeskai Ultimatum, if our opponent didn't have a counter spell, was going to just draw us an insane amount of cards. But yeah, on to the next game. Okay, we are going first. We've chosen to go on the play. Our opponent is Steve Rogers, and they do not have a companion. I think we're going to keep this. I like the early interaction. Hopefully our opponent isn't a more controlling style deck. So our opponent's on Teamer. Just going to get down a Search for Azcanta. Did I say a tap land? I like Teferi. Our opponent could have a Mystical Dispute here. We shall see. They do not. I think we'll tick up. The Search for Azcanta can hopefully find us a land. So maybe our opponent's on just some sort of ramp. Gonna graveyard that. Don't know how good Justice Strike's gonna be in this matchup. We'll tick down, try and find a land. We did not find one. Just hold up the veto. Our opponent might be on Wilderness Reclamation. Or they might cast a Nissa here. Just cultivate. You can let that happen. We want to save this veto for one of our opponent's threats. And an opt for our opponent. Just going to pass the turn. Search Rise Canter, we will keep a land on top. We'll just tick up. I think we're just going to lay this tapped. Just want to represent that veto. It might have been right to shock it in, so we could hold up Justice Strike as well. Blast Zone. And not. Our opponent could be looking to put 2 counters on the Blast Zone. So our opponent's just passing here. We'll keep that. So is our opponent just going to put 2 counters on the Blast Zone? They might do. The problem is if we sack our Teferi here to get some value, they just won't put 2 counters on the Blast Zone. They'll just put 1 counter on it and Search Rise Canter. So I think we make them do it.
Here we go.
I'd rather have our Search Rise Canter. We have less of them in the deck. And by them blowing up the Teferi, it gets us 1 step closer to it. I'm not taking this opportunity to play out another threat as I'd like to hold up Dovins Veto. So opponent's just putting 1 counter on it. They must value the Search Rise Canter more. And they're going to waste no time about blowing it up. So that was unfortunate. We did manage to waste quite a bit of our opponent's mana. Good to see an Uro here. Yeah, it's likely. There we go. So interesting whether we Justice Strike this, Shatter the Sky, Elspeth Conquers Death, or bounce with Teferi. Another Blast Zone. I think I'm leaning towards Justice Strike. It just allows us to use up our mana, and if we draw a land this turn, we can Teferi hold up Veto. The problem is our opponent can just keep redoing this. Gonna hold Bonecrusher Giant. So I'd really like to top deck and untap source here. Not happening. So I guess we'll just pass again. So our opponent is 1 mana off casting Ulamog. So they won't be able to cast Ulamog this turn, but they will next turn. They are definitely on Ugin mana though. That's why we hold the veto. So we've stumbled quite a bit and have been a bit slow. Our opponent's been able to ramp and draw additional cards. Wilderness Reclamation. So as long as we have Teferi on the board, Wilderness Reclamation shouldn't be that much of an issue. I think we'll try an Elspeth Conquers Death for that. So 2 Wilderness Reclamations now. I think we counter the spell that they cast off of it. This could be a really big mistake. Since our opponent gets a scry here. They chose not to. They could have scried or activated Blast Zone and then activate it again. So I think if our opponent wants to cast multiple Nexus here, the Teferi is going to come in handy since it can be activated on multiple turns.
After 1,000 years, I'm
Gonna lose tapped. So I think this game's already over. I think our opponent's got us in a position where it's going to be difficult for us to answer this. I can't imagine they won't just tick up the blast zone to 3 here, blow up our Teferi, and then they are able to cast their Nexuses at instant speed, if our opponent is on Nexus. They do have a red source, but this might just be played for the Triome. So exactly what we predicted. Opponent's just going to blow up Teferi. Maybe they can't cast Uro yet. So I really want to counter Search Canter, but I don't think we can afford to. So if our opponent Nexus is here, we're probably going to counter it, but the Search Canter is going to be the value that gives our opponent value each time they recast a Nexus. So opponent is floating. Waste no time, we will counter. Our opponent might have another Nexus in hand. So our deck's typically quite good against Nexus. The problem with the Nexus matchup is when what happens like this, we slipped, we left up Veto most of our turns. Okay, Reign of Revelation. This help fills the graveyard for a Search Cancer and Uro. And they found another Nexus. We will activate Teferi in response. We are tapped down, so if our opponent can just go off here, then we're going to lose. I'm going to give it maybe 1 or 2 turns and then scoop to this. I don't enjoy playing against Nexus. I don't know many people that do. I don't believe it makes for very fun content to watch, but bear with me. So opponent's going to cast that Shark Typhoon. We can ECD that. The opponent going to float mana. Yep. They cast a Nexus here, we're going to concede. Faster's Intervention for 12. So it'd be difficult to believe our opponent does not find a Nexus here. And they get 14/14 Shark. Like I said, if they find a Nexus, then we will concede. Top 12 cards in 34 though, so unlikely they don't find one of their 4 Nexuses. There's 2. Okay, so opponent is just going to pass the turn. Can discard that. Stick up again. So Triome. So we will attempt to take down the Shark Typhoon. So opponent got a fastest intervention here. Yep, we're just gonna concede to that. So there's a chance we could fight through that, but not particularly in the mood to do that. Apologies for anyone who is in the mood to watch me fight through a Nexus list. So now we've boarded out everything. I think we just want to put these back in. Actually, there's probably an argument to keeping Injustice Strikes instead. Since our opponent is not in Bant, we don't need to answer Teferi, but the Justice Strikes can answer the Sharks. Okay, game 2, we are going on the play. We have our Dovins Veto into Narset. It's quite likely our opponent has Mystical Disputes now. Mystical Disputes got to be one of the most played cards in Magic at the moment, especially on Arena. I feel like whenever I play against blue, the opponent has Mystical Disputes, but as do I. Would have been much happier for this to be a 3-mana Teferi. Hopefully our opponent taps down here. I think we're just going to stop our opponent from ramping, and hopefully they counter the Narset. Otherwise, we give him an opportunity to go Growth Spiral into
I have practiced against many foes.
Wilderness Reclamation.
Hone your prowess.
Think we just take another counter spell? So Narset makes Uro significantly worse. Okay, Mystical Dispute. Our opponent missed Search Rest Cancer. Our opponent missed a land drop.
And prepare.
I'm gonna like Teferi. I don't think we're gonna cast it this turn. I think we're just gonna cast Search Rest Cancer, holding up Dovins Veto or Mystical Dispute. But next turn we'll probably Teferi, put the Search Rest Cancer back in our opponent's hand, and then we get to hold up double counterspell. Where our opponent's missing land drops, the Mystical Dispute gets significantly better. I'm going to stop that. I think it was a mistake last game to allow that to resolve. We're going to keep that. We're just going to cast 5 mana Teferi, actually. We can allow our opponent to have Search Rest Cancer for one more turn, rather just generate some value. Or maybe since we were going to draw a card this turn anyway, it was correct to play this Teferi. Either way, if our opponent plays a Wilderness Reclamation, we will not be able to prevent that. I guess this line works much better if our opponent does have a Wilderness Reclamation, since we can match their Shark on their turn. Or in our next turn in our end step. Okay, so our opponent might be going for this line. They cast Wilderness Reclamation, they untap, and then they get to Shark down our known Teferi. But the decent thing about this is we get to hold up double Mystical Dispute in case our opponent has other counterspells. And then get to Shark Typhoon and match there. They can make a 3/3. They can make a 4/4 if they want to do it in their turn, but then we just get to bounce it. So I assume they just make a 3/3 here. You graveyard this Teferi, we don't need it at the moment. I just want to hit lands. So let's say how this pans out first. I assume our opponent does not counter. So opponent does negate. I think they were debating big time whether to do that or not. So we're going to Mystical Dispute this. So our opponent can pay for the Mystical Dispute if they want, but then we've got this second Mystical Dispute. So they are going to pay. We're going to cast the second one. We are locking the game away quite fast as well.
Sorry I'm late. We need to move quickly.
So we're going to put the Search Rest Cancer back in our opponent's hands. I think so. I don't think Wilderness Reclamation is going to be too beneficial. They haven't got any way to spend their mana. And with Teferi out, it's quite a bit worse. So opponent can't cast stuff at instant speed. They can't draw extra cards. So their Growth Spirals are worse. Their Uros are worse. Their Nexus of Fate have to be cast during their main phase. Meanwhile, we're generating card advantage with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. I think next turn, instead of just casting this out, depends on what we draw, we might just make a big Shark instead. I wanted to knock the Search Rest Cancer back instead of the Wilderness Reclamation, because our Teferi Time Raveler is essentially shutting it down, since they haven't got any castles out. And the Search Rest Cancer will prevent our opponent from finding an extra land, or doing the little Surveil. So opponent is just ready to pass turn. So we'll graveyard this land. So we'd like to get to a point in which our Search Rest Cancer can flip now.
You know what? I'm not done.
So, do we want to Elspeth Conquers Death?
I've got it.
So if we Elspeth Conquers Death, it's going to allow us 4 mana up. After we untap. We haven't laid land yet. 4 mana up, which means we can make a 2/2 shark. Which means if our opponent decides to just make a shark in the end step, they will be able to go straight through it. So I think we're not going to do that just yet. I think we'd rather counteract what our opponent's going to do here. It'll also add quite the clock to them. Meanwhile, 5 mana Teferi is pressuring them. The ultimate is coming up soon. Yeah, so they're just going to make a 3/3 shark here. So we get to make a 5/5. So opponent's 1 turn off of flipping Search for Azcanta. Hopefully we can find an answer. By cycling the Shark Typhoon instead of casting Elspeth Conquers Death, it gets us closer to flipping Search for Azcanta. So I think unless it is an answer to their Search for Azcanta, we will be throwing it in the bin. Obviously it's still conditional. If it's Jeskai was a Maiden, we might keep that as well. So we get to make a 5/5 here. We could make a 3/3 and hold out for a Dovins Veto. But I think we just want to add a big clock to our opponent. So we'll just eat the shark. Our opponent does have a blast zone, which is a way to use their Wilderness Reclamation. So they could tick it up to get rid of Teferi. We would also get rid of Narset at the same time. So we really like a land on the top. So opponent's going to blow him up now. This helps with the Search for Azcanta.
I still have much to learn.
So now we just get to keep this for free. And we will tick up. Maybe it was correct. I think it was correct to Elspeth Conquers Death first. Since if our opponent counters this, now we don't have Teferi protection. Yeah, if our opponent has a negate here, this looks really bad. So we sequenced this turn wrong. We should have Elspeth Conquers Death first. We didn't get punished for it. So our opponent can't make a shark. Our opponent has to answer Teferi this turn. We get a Search for Azcanta activation. And we can potentially find a Mystical Dispute or Dovins Veto off of that. They're going to flip now. Makes up for their missed land drops somewhat. So opponent has Tamiyo. Think we're going to let Tamiyo resolve? What have they got in the graveyard? They have a negate. They have nothing that directly answers the Teferi there. Their only answer that I can think of is a Brazen Borrower. They might be ticking up here to try and find it. But if we get to Ultimate Teferi next turn, I think that's game over. So they're going to turn Blast Zone. I think that's going to be too slow. They're giving us a good game. Unsure, we didn't... Although I assume Tamiyo is in their deck, we didn't see Tamiyo in the last 2 games, so a little bit uncertain why our opponent decided to play Tamiyo there. Okay, so our opponent's quite rightly chosen to go on the play. So we have a Sinister Sabotage, not quite the Mystical Disputes that we had last time in Dovins Vetos, but I think we're going to keep this. We're also missing red mana, which is a little bit bad, but most of our spells are Azorius. So since we have 2 Narsets, I think we'll cast Narset first. I do think Teferi is more powerful in this matchup. Aether Gust is quite good. I think we will Aether Gust an Uro here, since it allows our opponent to hold up Mystical Dispute. They're not going to. So our opponent can Wilderness Reclamation next turn. Just going to pay 2 life and pass, I think. They could Growth Spiral here. So opponent is Growth Spiraling into a Blast Zone. Decided to put Uro into the graveyard. That might indicate a second one. Okay, so opponent missed the land drop. I fear we are about to miss ours as well. I think we are. I think we're just going to go to discard. I think we're just discarding the Elspeth Conquers Death. I don't like the position we're in though. Since I don't really want to tap down when we have counter spells in hand. If our opponent resolves a threat, they could quite easily counter our Teferi, Narset, and then we're left high and dry. They get to resolve a threat, and then if they resolve Wilderness Reclamation, then they get to hold up counter spells on top of that. Sort of goes downhill from there. So opponent's left up one colourless mana. So I think we're going to do this. We're going to Sinister Sabotage, and this is for the Surveil purposes. Because Aether Gusting or Mystical Disputing would have done fine. Land is great, also red mana. So which we have an opportunity to resolve a Planeswalker here. I think we do resolve Teferi since it makes our counter spells better. And we're just going to put that Search for Azcanta back in their hands since we have a second one. In the colours your opponent's in, they might want to Blast Zone it. But otherwise they're going to be bouncing it. So that's the first step to victory, resolving our Teferi. Feels like our opponent maybe made a mistake not tapping the Blast Zone, at least representing Mystical Dispute. I still think I would have made the same play. So Tamiyo for our opponent. We are certainly going to counter that. This is why we decided to resolve Teferi instead of Narset. So we can't hold up Aether Gust here, but I think it's worth it. We can dig for more counterspells. So instead of taking Teferi, we're going to take Time Raveler. Again, I think in the Wilderness Reclamation, he's so important. So normally I'm used to playing against Teferi. Normally our opponent's in Bant. So I think we're in a really good position here. Especially with Dovins Veto. Now we get to play Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. So opponent gets to tick up this Blast Zone here, blow it up, blow up both of our Planeswalkers. So we will play Teferi. We do have backups, obviously, of each of them. But we get to tick up here and hold up Dovins Veto.
Keep up the pace.
So we'll untap 2. Yeah, so it's difficult to imagine a world where our opponent doesn't blow up the 2 Planeswalkers here. They might want to blow that they chose to put Nexus in the bin. A line they could have taken was blow up the Blast Zone in response to the trigger, so they could potentially put the top card in their library to the graveyard to flip it.
My mind needs a rest.
So now that Search for Azcanta is in flippable range, we're going to cast Teferi first, since we might want to tuck with our Teferi. Hopefully they tap down for a counterspell here. Nope. Then we're going to let this resolve. Maybe since we have the second Dovins Veto, we actually want to use it here. So it looks like our opponent has the second counterspell here, yep. Okay, not necessarily good news. I think we stop this from flipping. We still have land drop, so I think we stop this from flipping. Opponent can recast Uro here, but I think we just Aether Gust that. If our opponent wants to use a counterspell to resolve their Uro, then I think that's fine. Since Teferi can come down next turn, potentially alongside Narset. So opponent's going to do that, so they'll need another Mystical Dispute here.
I question this outcome.
Otherwise, Aether Gust is going to put that, I assume, on top. unless they have a second one. So they had another Mystical Dispute. That's their third Mystical Dispute. So opponent had to tap down to do that, which is the good news.
You know what? I'm not done.
So I think we're gonna Narset first. See if we find an additional counterspell.
I train every day. No, keep an open mind.
We just want the Elspeth Conquers Death. We could have taken the Justice Strike as well. I don't think we're going to play... Maybe we play Search West Canter out here. Don't think we play Search West Canter out here now. I'd rather have the Aether Gust up. I think we just take our time with this. This is one of our opponent's key pieces, so we're going to counter that. That's our third Dovins Veto, I believe. That's our second Dovins Veto. So we have one more in the list. Another Sinister Sabotage, 2 more Mystical Disputes. And just put that back on top again. Maybe this Aether Gust is a little bit aggressive. So Jeskai Ultimatum is really good here. Let's see what we draw first. Sorry, yeah, Inspired Ultimatum, Jeskai Ultimatum.
We need to move quickly. Don't worry, I got this.
So we get to leave 2 mana up, 4 mana for our opponent's turn as well. So I think we're just gonna do this now. Yeah, we're double counterspell here. Don't think we're gonna tap down. No reason to. Just go to discard. Untap, untap, and we will discard one of our Search West Canters. So yeah, this is a really good position, especially with the second one in hand. We can instant speed this during our opponent's turn as well. So we have triple counterspell. With our opponent missing so many land drops, it's going to be difficult to imagine how they can get back into this. So they have only 4 cards in the graveyard. You can just let this resolve now. This might be a mistake. This might be the way they get back into it. But I think our Teferi is going to get to a point where it can bounce it back. Let's stick up.
Keep up the pace.
I think we just cast a Shark Typhoon here and try and close this game. So we can cast 3 mana Narset and hold up Mystical Disputes. So we get to hold up Dovins Veto and Mystical Disputes for our opponent's turn. You just take the second Shark Typhoon. Again, this might be too aggressive. We might just be wanting to draw land drops. Might wanting to cast this and then just pass from there. The next turn we get to make a 7/7 and deal 5 to our opponent. They're giving us a good game. I can completely understand why. I think our opponent just missed a few too many land drops. That was just randomness getting there. Well, I think our opponent did play well. We also played really well and played around what they had. But yeah, let's move on to the next game. This hand has no white mana in it. No early interaction. So if we are against a creature deck that starts off relatively fast, we're going to be under a lot of pressure. I think we're going to have to mulligan this. This hand, the Justice Strike, I think makes this keepable. I think we're not going to be greedy. We're going to put the Inspired Ultimatum on the bottom. I believe we've been punished enough for putting our 4th land on the bottom. I'm going to hold up Justice Strike this turn. Okay, 2 basic swamps. Maybe we're against mono black and they don't have a 1 or 2 drop. Quite possibly mono black now. I think we want to save the Bone Crusher Giant just as removal. Just play a Teferi here. We'd like to find a second white source. Ultimatum. I think we can discard the Ultimatum. We're quite far off of casting this. I don't see our opponent being able to answer a Shark Typhoon once it resolves. So getting to 6 mana might be a priority. Opponent has the Murderous Rider. We'll just tick up. You can discard reinforcements. Our opponent's going to be losing life probably faster than us. And we haven't seen a creature yet. So we don't know how creature heavy they are.
I was out of sync.
So that would be why we want our second white. I think we can shock in here. Potentially we'd like to Bone Crusher Giant plus Justice Strike. It might have been correct to just play out the Bone Crusher Giant there as well. Just gonna play Murderous Rider. Let's pass the turn. Tap land here is quite bad. I think we're just gonna play out Bone Crusher Giant. We're gonna hold up Justice Strike. And next turn look to play a Shark Typhoon. Or maybe an Elspeth Conquers Death on the Phyrexian Arena. Though it has already generated our opponent quite a lot of card advantage. Just going to be a Grasp here. So our opponent's going to be able to mitigate this life loss with the Murderous Rider. This is painful. Our opponent's going to get to take the Shark Typhoon. They decided to take Elspeth Conquers Death instead. Mastermind. Now we top deck the Dovins Veto. I think we'd rather Shark Typhoon for 2. It depends whether we want to tap down. I don't know what our opponent could have. So our opponent can potentially have 7 mana next turn. I think we're going to risk it. Since if we get to untap now, we're in a really good position. So Liliana. So the Dovins Veto would have been really good there, but I think our opponent's already drawn enough cards. Teferi's really good here. That allows us to make a 4/4. We do have to find an answer to this Liliana sooner rather than later. And there's our answer. So we get to hold up Dovins Veto to protect our Teferi or protect Elspeth Conquers Death, and then we get to answer the Liliana next turn. Dread Presence. We're going to allow that. Opponent's likely to just play a Swamp now. Yep. Gonna target Teferi. That can resolve.
Slow down.
Our opponent doesn't need the cards anymore. I think we're okay to counter this since our opponent's now tapped down. We also get to make an additional 2/2. I think we're going to tick up just for the extra loyalty. Let's tick up first. Let's discard Teferi. Take out Liliana.
No, defeat. What a drag.
And I think we are going to just start pressuring our opponent. And we'll represent a relevant spell. Also, it's something to discard to Teferi, Master of Time. So we can potentially get back a Bone Crusher Giant or another Teferi. Ugin. Okay, we could see a -5 here. Opponent's going to attack first. So we'll pass the blocks. Since our opponent is going to probably minus the Ugin, they probably should have played this after. We're just going to take 6. They're probably going to -6 actually to get the Shark Typhoon as well. So we're really looking for something relevant off the top. A Bone Crusher Giant will do it. Another Glacial Fortress.
I've learned my lesson.
So really need to find something relevant. Teferi's a redraw.
Let's slow this down. There was nothing.
Don't think we want to play out second Teferi. Since we couldn't cast something. We get punished by hand hate here.
Looks like I'm out of time.
So our opponent has Bajuka Bog as well. So now Bone Crusher Giant isn't an answer. I think too many Teferis in a row.
I am not going to sit this one out. I've got time. If you show remorse, I'll show restraint. Here we go.
I think we're keeping that to cycle. Feel the game slipping away now. They're just going to kill our Teferi. Teferis are buying us time. So we need to find an Elspeth Conquers Death really. We have one left in the deck. 5 mana Teferi would be good. And there's 5 mana Teferi. Since we can play already, we're going to cycle. So we get to tuck Ugin here. But then our opponent gets to draw 3. So they get the Ugin back. And it will come down with 7 loyalty this time. So I think we just plus actually. I think that's a difficult decision. Since our opponent, we're essentially saying to our opponent you need to waste an additional 8 mana. And play our land. I think this is difficult. I think we had a few turns to top deck something and it didn't work out. Our opponent is a much more controlling style though, so I could see bringing in our, not our Mystical Disputes, but our Sinister Sabotage.
My greatest creation.
So our opponent's just showing us a few extra cards before we lose here. Yep. We'll just pass the turn. Hopefully our opponent just plays some more things so we get some more information. They do have Cabal's Stronghold as well. Another Dread Presence. Does the opponent have a Swamp to finish us off? Yep. Okay, so game 1's going to go to our opponent. I'm going to go sideboarding. Justice Strike didn't look too great. It did with the Dread Presence, but not of anything else. Clarion looks okay, but I think Shatter the Sky is going to be enough. I think we want the Sinister Sabotage. Maybe the Narsets for some added value. It also prevents our opponent from using their enchantment. And just cut there. I think I like this configuration. This hand is slow. It doesn't protect us against turn 2 hand hate, but we're going to keep, since it has all of our colours. And a reasonable amount of lands. As long as we don't mana screw, this should be okay. Or mana flood. So our opponent's just on some variant of mono black control. No turn 1 hand hate like Duress. Mind Stone. So we just get to put the Mind Stone back here. Hopefully waste a turn for our opponent.
Trust me. You'll thank me later. Oh, I've done the hero thing before.
Drawing all of our shock lands. Agonizing Remorse. They probably take the Shark Typhoon since we have 2 Elspeth Conquers Death. Nope. Maybe they have more hand hate for the second one. So I think we're going to shock here, make a 2-2. And then we have our turn 5 play and potentially turn 6 play. Depending on what our opponent does. So they're ramping. Just gonna make a 2-drop. Make a 2/2 shark. We need to be careful our opponent doesn't Elder Spell as well.
Let's try this.
So our opponent can't Ugin next turn. I think it's worth taking the 2 to keep information hidden.
Trust me. You'll thank me later. Let's skip to the good part.
Oh, they can have that Ugin though.
I am ancient and wise. He
That is going to +1.
of the multiverse obeys me.
So if we don't answer this Ugin, it gives our opponent the opportunity to cast the other Ugin. So we're going to +1.
No time for a break.
I think we're going to put a Mind Stone back into our opponent's hand just to slow them down.
Trust me. I have a plan.
Bone Crusher Giant is nice. I think we don't want to trade with this and give our opponent the card since they're missing land drops. And I think we'll just cycle Triome. Dread Presence. So they found land drop. They're going to kill our shark. I think we're happy for Teferi to take 2 here. Teferi's just going to try and gain some value. So opponent misses. Now we get to cycle. Just another land. We're flooding out. Stick up.
Hurry.
Okay, triple Bone Crusher Giant. I think we just play out 2 of them. I think we will block the 2/2 if it attacks. It's going at Teferi.
That was uncalled for.
So our opponent can cast Ugin next turn. If they're going to cast Ugin, I don't think we want to cast this Bone Crusher Giant. So we have the counterspell for Ugin.
I'm known for my excellent timing.
So our opponent might be missing on land drops. If they are, I think we're going to bounce the Mind Stone to the hand. Our opponent can sack it and draw though. Let's +1 first.
Hold that thought.
Teferi's quite nice. So if we bounce a Mind Stone, our opponent can sacrifice it to draw a card in response, and that means we won't get to draw a card. It'd be hard to believe our opponent wouldn't have land on the top, or in the top 2 draws. I think we're just going to bounce the Dread Presence. Okay, so our opponent gives us a potential extra mana here. Go get red. They get to kill Teferi. It's quite a nice play.
I've got time.
Very sneaky. I think we're going to use that mana to cast the Teferi. Can start filtering through these lands.
It takes impressive knowledge to be a temporal archmage.
So opponent gets to soak up 2. So I think we're just gonna play this out. We get to hold up Sinister Sabotage. So if our opponent has land here, there's not much we can do. So we may as well counter. Since they're definitely taking the Sinister Sabotage and we'd rather have the Surveil. So if our opponent does cast an Ugin, we'll want the Elspeth Conquers Death. We don't want to see land into Ugin here. Okay, this isn't bad. We lose one card. And we'll leave the Elspeth Conquers Death on top. We won't draw a Teferi in response.
Hardly my worst defeat.
Okay, and our opponent's going to concede there. I think they was hoping for more of a blowout than just one card. Okay, but going on to the next game. Did we see anything else that makes us want to sideboard differently? I don't think so. We're just really being careful of that Ugin. Maybe we want Mystical Disputes. Though it isn't blue, we just want the additional counterspell, but I don't think so. I think the way we've boarded is good enough. This is a fine hand. Might cycle Shark Typhoon on 2. Just to give us something to do. And then we can go 3, 4. Okay, so our opponent is doing a little bit of ramp. I think we will cast Shark Typhoon here just to make sure we hit our land drops. Hopefully our opponent taps out here. Okay, perfect. We just get to put that into their hand. Prevent them from drawing cards. We pay 0. I think we'd rather just play Narset. Gives us immediate value as well, but stops the Phyrexian Arena for a turn. Search as Canter. So opponent takes Agonizing Remorse. Difficult to determine what they take here. It depends on their hand. Take 5 mana Teferi. So not phased about the Time Raveler. We'll take another counterspell. I think we just try and set up for future draws. Do we want to draw another card? I think we just want to play Search for Ascanter. I'm incentivized to play Teferi, but our opponent can sacrifice the Mind Stone in response, like they're doing now, to fizzle the card draw, and we'd rather our opponent to have Phyrexian Arena out while we have Narset, since they're taking a damage and not drawing a card each turn. Obliterator. So this is where Teferi shines.
This isn't a fight you can win. That's more like it.
Hopefully our opponent just has to replay that out. They're just going to replay it. I think we graveyard that. We have enough answers to this. Yep, just want to find lands.
No, I am not making this up as I go.
I think we're just going to phase it out for one turn.
This isn't my first time being the hero.
So if our opponent has double Phyrexian Obliterator, then we'll want to hold on to the board wipes. I think we still are going to discard one though. I think that's difficult. I just really want the Sinister Sabotages for this Ugin. So we get to phase out now, and then we get to instant speed Teferi board wipe on the next turn, and then we get to hold up Sinister Sabotage and Inspired Ultimatum. So our opponent's going for that Narset. We are not going to allow that. Just Mind Stone. Double Mind Stone. Looking for land here. Graveyard that. Fortunately, we did not hit land. Let's see if we can hit one off the top.
I've got it.
And discard Ultimatum. So unfortunately, I think we just have to hold up board wipe here. So land would have given us the ability to Teferi. We could Teferi in +1, but if we don't hit land off the top, we're in a really bad situation. So we will just pass. Also, Shattering the Sky in our opponent's turn means they can't draw another card. Let's see if we would have drawn a land. No, we wouldn't have. So that paid off. So we don't mind if our opponent wants to tap down here. Yep, they're going to play a land. Is this going to kill the Narset? Yeah.
Such violence is upsetting.
So land would be great. Second Narset though. Since our other Teferi, I think we're going to keep this. And we'll transform. Since our other Teferi is capable of phasing out the Dread Presence, and I think we might do that in their upkeep, we're going to keep this Narset. Let's +1 first. We'll tick this up so it can survive. So I think I like our position now. And I think we're going to phase this Dread Presence out before our opponent can lay a swamp in their main phase.
Beyond the veil of reality, keep an open mind.
We'll take Dovins Veto. Just want to keep that counterspell magic up. So it's going to draw. So it looks like they're just struggling to hit land drops. We'll phase out. If our opponent does nothing, we can just Azcanta. It's going to attempt to Murderous Rider. I think we're happy to Sinister Sabotage this. So opponent could have another Murderous Rider here, but I think that's fine. I think land's good as well. Since we have Inspired Ultimatum, drawing lands is fine. Okay, so opponent does have double Murderous Rider.
Shall miss your company.
I think we have one more Narset. Yeah. So let's put this back in hand now. You can discard land now.
If you show remorse, keep up the pace.
Our opponent would like the ability to cast things at instant speed.
A matter of time.
This is going to happen.
My past is catching up to me.
I think that's fine. I think we can counter this.
Hold that thought.
I think we just want to double Bone Crusher Giant here. And then I think we can play one out. This blocks Teferi quite nicely while holding up counter spells. I don't think we let our opponent look at our hand, since we have Inspired Ultimatum, and that's just 5 cards there. This does give our opponent the opportunity to resolve a spell though, so this could be bad. Yeah. Okay, that's not that bad, since Inspired Ultimatum can now finish off Liliana. Or Elspeth Conquers Death can do it. I think I prefer Elspeth Conquers Death doing it.
The good part.
Ugh, well, this was unpleasant.
I think we just put the Mind Stone back in the hand.
I know my responsibility. I'll protect you.
Got to imagine our opponent's getting a little bit annoyed at all this bounce. So we're probably exclusively saving this for an Ugin now. We put our opponent off it for quite long. It's only a matter of time before they have it. Is that the Ugin we want to put them off, though? I think we can't afford to counter this. Our opponent gets to kill Teferi here and slow us down. But the problem is if we counter this, our opponent has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. So if we counter this, our opponent can cast Ugin next turn. I don't think we can. We can finish this off with a Bone Crusher Giant. Okay, they are just going for the Elspeth Conquers Death. I think that's really good. So now our opponent needs 2 answers to Teferi next turn. I think we're just going to activate as Cancer here looking for a second counter spell.
Don't worry, I got this.
Narset. Just cast Narset.
My prowess is on my home, your prowess.
Teferi. So I guess the life doesn't matter at this point. We're all in on Teferi. I can imagine our opponent just casting a 8 mana Ugin. Yep. And that's probably going to be game. We'll keep that, yep. Opponent's going to concede there, so our Teferi can then -8. Okay, the final game of the league. Our opponent is on the play. We have a 2-lander, a bit of interaction, so if our opponent is on a creature deck, then we're going to be rewarded with this hand. I think we're going to risk it, because we're on the draw, hopefully we can find our 3rd and 4th land. Our opponent's mulligan to 6. Okay, looks like we might be rewarded as long as we don't stumble too bad. That is not a land. I think I'm going to incentivize Bone Crushering above Justice Striking. Since then we can play the Bone Crusher out as a blocker. Might see an Annex here. We're going to take one. I think we're not going to take one. In case they want to Spectacle something. I thought I was going to take one. Friend just has a Chain Whirler. Okay, now I think we're just going to Justice Strike this. Since the Bone Crusher can't block it very well. Firebrand. I don't think we're going to take an unnecessary free here. Our opponent chose not to play something else out, so we're just going to play Bone Crusher Giant. So Chain Whirler means that our heroic reinforcements in the board, our timely reinforcements, sorry, in the board aren't going to be as good. Skewer. So we go to 13 here and get to board wipe. Just need to find one more land, and then our entire hand's unlocked. Obviously the ultimatum's a little bit away, so a full costed light up stage. So we get to hold up Justice Strike here. Really need to find a land for this Torbran. Opponent's just going to Chain Whirler. So interesting what we do here. I think we Justice Strike. We could hold out for the land and Elspeth Conquers Death. But we're going to graveyard that in the hope for lands, since we have one already. I think we're going to just Teferi and try and draw a land.
You show remorse, I'll show restraint. Oh, I've done
There's the land.
everything before.
So I'm glad the shock isn't going at our face. We're going to keep that. Since now one more land and we have Inspired Ultimatum unlocked. So we're going to go to 10. I think we're going to graveyard that in the hopes for an actual land. Oh wait, Search Cantor gets to transform here. So that's fine. We will draw 5, deal 5, and we'll game 5. That's probably going to be that. That's going to be game. It's a land as well. Discard 1. Discard Teferi. My opponent's going to need something really special here. I'm just gonna tick up.
Known for my excellent
Don't need the extra cards at the moment.
might be a bad idea.
Steamkin. Just see a lightning strike on Teferi. My opponent chose not to do anything. Interesting. I think that since that's only 2 mana, we'll just activate as Canter. Just take veto. I don't think it matters at this point. Don't think we show them timely reinforcements.
I've got time.
I don't want to show them timely reinforcements if it's not necessary. I'm going to veto this just because we can. It's probably going to break our opponent's spirit as well, so it's really worth doing it. But our opponent's not conceding. They're seeing out to the end, so hopefully his Bone Crusher Giant is just going to kill them. Experimental Frenzy. We're going to allow our opponent to have this and Conquer's Death. I'm just going to target us, deal 5 to them, draw 5 more. Yeah, opponent's going to concede there. For a second I thought the 5 damage killed them, but definitely not. Okay, so while our opponent does have Chain Whirlers, I still think we want the tiny reinforcements. We want the Clarions. Dovins Vetos can go. Search for Canter is too slow. I think Shark Typhoons are too slow. They are a really fast way of closing the game. Maybe we'll want Shark Typhoon, cut a Teferi. So our opponent does have Frenzy, but I think we're going to rely on bouncing that and Elspeth Conquer's deathing it, rather than trying to Dovins Veto it. A sideboard option for this deck would be Heliod's Intervention, that would do double time in this deck. It would either gain us extra life or destroy the Experimental Frenzy or Embercleave, but we don't have it. If this hand had blue mana, I think I'd be keeping, but the fact it doesn't, I think we're going to mulligan. This hand is better, not great. These are not going to work out if our opponent has a Chain Whirler, but we're going to keep. We put the Elspeth Conquer's Death on bottom. Since this is exactly like potentially 12 life, regardless of if our opponent has a Chain Whirler. So no 1-drop for our opponent. Not sure whether we shock next turn to hold up Bone Crusher Giant. I think we might do, since then if we don't draw an untapped land, we can just Bone Crusher again. No shock. Pyromancer. I don't think we shock. Since we're going to be shocking, taking 2 damage to prevent 2 damage. So hopefully that's the only Chain Whirler our opponent has. Now I think we'll take 2 damage to essentially gain 4 life. If our opponent has another Chain Whirler, we could be in a bit more trouble. So they don't. So we get to buy quite a bit of time here. By just blocking 1. So Deafening Clarion or Shatter the Sky would be perfect off the top. Preferably a Deafening Clarion, so we can actually cast that. We're just going to play Teferi, start digging for them answers.
Let's make this quick.
Think we can't be too greedy not to keep land. We'll just put Shark Typhoon down. The Bone Crushers are a way to close the game. That might have been a reason to board this out, since we have Bone Crusher Giants. They don't have another Chain Whirler. Okay, interesting. Shatter. I think we can discard land now. I think I want to keep... discard one of the Bone Crusher Giants. I think it's maybe too greedy to discard both. So we want to keep this Teferi alive. I think it's worth taking 3. Teferi can go to 4. The next turn we get to Shatter. We could see an Ember Cleave here, actually, something I didn't consider. If they have an Ember Cleave, they get to finish off our Teferi. No shock.
I knew that was coming.
So Teferi's falling to 2. Nope.
Looks like I'm out of time.
I think we're gonna... Maybe we don't. Since we can just Justice Strike. I think we hold up Bone Crusher Giant and Justice Strike, actually. Yep. Just not going to take the damage. I think it's... Maybe I should have just Shattered and the next turn done this. But this blocks the Torbrand. If our opponent has a Chain Whirler, it won't finish off the Bone Crusher Giant. This works out a little bit worse, but... So now I think we're just going to attack. And... yeah, we'll just Shatter. As soon as our opponent plays a creature and deals us a bit of damage, we've got another timely reinforcements. We have to top deck anything, any sort of card draw here. So we're good. I'm just going to pass the turn. Since we'd be casting this for no value, since we have the same amount of creatures and more life. This reads, if you have less life or fewer creatures. I think lands are fine, as long as our opponent's drawing lands as well. But we have quite a bit of time here. There is an argument to just casting the Elspeth Conquers Death to get back a Teferi. So we had to draw something relevant eventually.
If nothing else, I will protect the moment.
Gonna Lightning Strike. Do they have a shock as well?
Time's getting
They probably should have waited for us to discard before they made this decision. I think we keep 5 mana Teferi and discard timely reinforcements. Then we have an answer to something and Teferi. I think we have 2 more reinforcements in the list. 1 more. Hopefully this is the nail in the coffin. I don't imagine our opponent can answer this in 1 turn. And if this can just draw us a few cards.
right on schedule. Keep up the pace.
We'll tap land first. So our opponent's hoping to top deck an answer to Teferi here, I would imagine. Since they're not getting us from 18 to 0 in 1 turn. I don't think Steamkin's going to be good enough.
You know what? I'm not done.
Not with an Aether Gust. So we don't need to Aether Gust this yet. Experimental Frenzy. I think we hope our opponent doesn't go off here. And then we can Elspeth Conquers Death it. Torbrand. So I think we let Torbrand resolve. And then we kill the runaway. We put the runaway Steamkin back on top. The runaway Steamkin back on top. So our Teferi gets to survive. And we'll draw.
No time for a break.
I think that was quite a lucky draw actually. Maybe we made a mistake with that. But I didn't want to really give up the Teferi. If we minus the Torbrand on the Teferi on the Torbrand, we was doing the same thing.
If I don't have a plan, I'll just make one up.
We'll discard, and then we'll just phase out Torbrand. And then Inspired Ultimatum should lock away the game. Probably go after Teferi here. Yeah, concede. So we just phase it out. Our opponent plays the runaway Steam Key in, which I think they should have put on the bottom, hoping for something else. And because they couldn't play it with the Experimental Frenzy anyway. And if the Frenzy got blown up, then I think they didn't want Steamkin off the top anyway. So they probably should have bottomed it, hoping for another Steamkin. But yeah, that was the league. I'm glad you guys enjoyed watching. We ended up getting to 5 wins with Jeskai Control, which is pretty mad. So if you guys are looking for a deck to go for the league, let's look at our prizes. Got a Jace, a Storm the Vault, and a Vraska. Ooh, I remember playing Vraska during Limited. So let's have a recap of the deck. I'm sure you guys looked at the beginning of the video anyway. But it was my version of Jeskai Control. It was something we're using at the moment to climb to Mythic. If you're watching that series on the channel at the moment, we used it to get from Platinum 1 to Diamond 4. So it worked really well. Did quite well in Diamond as well. We got a few wins. The list, I quite like it. We originally started with the Sinister Sabotages in the main and the 2 Timely Reinforcements in the board, making up 4 in the board. But we decided to switch them out since there was so much Gruel aggro. The deck is really capable of dealing with aggro lists just because of the Justice Strikes and Bone Crusher Giants. And the Bone Crusher Giants are just phenomenal at answering a creature and then playing as a blocker. But the Timely Reinforcements are one of the all-stars of the list. As long as your opponent hasn't got Chain Whirler, they work out pretty well. And even if your opponent has got Chain Whirler, it's 3 mana for 6 life. A lot of the time you're willing to pay that. The list is also quite good at dealing with control in the main board, just because of Inspired Ultimatum, Search Rascanta, and Dovins Veto. We obviously have like quite a few copies of Teferi as well. We have 9 copies of Teferi in total, so it could be a nightmare for a lot of lists. Mid-range lists, the Elspeth Conquers Death just does so much work along with the Shark Typhoons. You can make an argument for playing an Ugin in this list, and I did play an Ugin originally if you watched the stream, but I felt I wasn't casting that much. 8 mana is a little bit too much costed, a little bit too costed. While it's like an insane board wipe, we do have a lot of permanents as well. We have our Bone Crusher Giants, our Teferis, Elspeth Conquers Death, Shark Typhoon, and Search Rascanta. So we don't often want to minus Ugin as much. We'd rather just have the massive life gain, the 5 cards, and remove a permanent off the board. But yeah, that was the list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm sort of just rambling now. If you guys enjoyed it, please drop it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow it at the moment, so it'd be fantastic if you guys could do that. Also, I'm looking for new content and things to put in videos and different deck lists. So if you guys have any ideas, maybe a combo, a card you want me to build around, or you have a specific deck list, just do 2 simple things. All I want you to do is subscribe to the channel, because that'd be really nice and kind, and drop us a comment below as to what you would like to see, and I will make sure it comes up in an upcoming video. All you have to do is mention it. We're going to be looking at doing some more drafts on the channel as well, because drafts are so much fun. I'm still learning the new format as well, M21, so it's a learning curve for everyone. And where it's a Coreset, it's obviously powered down quite a bit, so exciting to learn that. But yeah, that was the list. Do all the normal stuff, and have a nice day.